I first heard about Dagger's Point from my grandfather, who used to tell stories by the fireplace in the dim orange glow of his old cabin lamp. He called it a place the sea forgot, where fog never lifted and the rocks looked like twisted spines jutting from the earth. As a child, I thought it was just a scary bedtime story, something meant to keep me from wandering too far when we camped near the coast. But after he passed away, and I inherited the cabin, I found something that made me wonder whether the story was real all along. It began with the map. I discovered it during a rainy afternoon, a week into living in the cabin alone. The wind hissed outside like it had teeth. I had planned to clean out the attic, which I'd been avoiding for days because the stairs leading up to it were thin and creaky, like bones ready to snap. The attic smelled like dust and old leather. Cobwebs hung in corners like thin curtains, and the light bulb dangled on a chain that flickered when I tugged it. Among old books and broken tools, I found a small chest. Not locked, just latched. Inside, wrapped in canvas and string, was a folded map. It was old, drawn by hand in faded ink, with markings and trails I didn't recognize. One area was circled in red, the name, Dagger's Point, written in sharp script. Right below it, "Do not go alone." Chills climbed up my arms despite the attic's stale heat. There was something unnatural about the handwriting, like it had been etched in haste, not written, but scratched. I took the map downstairs, made tea, and laid it flat on the dining table. It was detailed, far more than any local hiking map I'd seen. There were symbols I didn't understand, odd runes, a crescent moon over a cave, and one that looked like an eye. At first, I laughed it off. Probably a prank my grandfather pulled, he loved stories. But one trail on the map matched a real trail I knew nearby. It was rarely used, overgrown in places, but definitely real. It led deep into the woods where the fog sat low and permanent like a curse. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the map. It sat rolled on my nightstand like a sleeping snake. And just past midnight, I heard footsteps above me. In the attic. At first, I froze. No one had the key to the cabin but me. I grabbed the flashlight and crept to the attic stairs. My heart thudded with each step. The door was closed, locked from my side. I stood there, listening. Casting long shadows across Mercy Hills. She grabbed the journal, locked the door behind her, and hurried downstairs. But Margot was gone. The front desk was empty. Outside, no cars. No people. Just rows of windows watching her. She ran toward the church, the only building still lit, and pounded on the heavy doors. They creaked open. The priest was standing inside, facing the altar. His voice echoed as he said, "You shouldn't have come back, Tasha. We already buried you once." She stared. "What the hell are you talking about?" He turned. His face was familiar, too familiar. It was her father. But her father had died 10 years ago. Hadn't he? The stained glass windows behind him began to weep dark streaks of something black and sticky. The floor shifted under her feet. And then she felt it. Hands. From beneath. Gripping her ankles. Let me know and I'll drop part 2. We'll dive deep into the underground tunnels beneath Mercy Hills, explore its twisted rituals, reveal the townsfolks packed with what sleeps beneath, and track the terrifying fate of those who came back wrong. Shall we continue? You said. Continue. ChatGPT said. Absolutely. Here's part 2 of The Deep Below Mercy Hills, the second 20,000 character section of this slow burn, unsettling horror tale. Let's dive deeper into the dark roots of this cursed town. Part 2, The Hands Beneath. The hands wrapped around her ankles were cold, like something dredged from an icy swamp. Fingers pressed against her skin with far too many joints, curling in an unnatural rhythm. Tasha let out a panicked gasp and kicked, hard, stumbling backward through the church's open doorway and landing roughly on the wooden steps. When she looked down again, there was nothing. No hands. No gaping hole. Just the same uneven wooden floor. The priest. No, her father, stood inside the doorway, backlit by candlelight. His voice was soft now, as if the moment had passed and something in him had dulled. They told me you'd come. But I hoped they were wrong. Tasha's voice shook. You're dead. He nodded once. That's what they said, too. She stared at him, the curve of his jaw, the scar under his left eye from a chainsaw accident when she was 10. He looked exactly as he had the day they buried him, only his skin didn't move right. It stretched a little too tightly around his bones, and when he blinked, it took a second too long. What is this place? She demanded. A graveyard. Built on a lie. And then he stepped back into the darkness, the door slowly creaking shut behind him. Tasha sprinted. The streets were almost pitch black now, lit only by flickering porch lamps and the pale orange haze of a single streetlight that buzzed like it was full of insects. Every house she passed felt wrong, silent, but watching. Curtains fluttered without wind. She saw faces peering out, blank, expressionless faces, each one almost identical to the other. She didn't stop running until she reached the cemetery on the town's edge. It was unlike any graveyard she'd ever seen. There were headstones, yes, but many of them were blank. Others bore only single names, Agnes. Elder. Bound. One was simply etched with. Still breathing. Do not unearth. And scattered around the edges were mounds of fresh soil, too many for a town this size. Tasha stepped carefully between the stones, heart thudding. A strange hum seemed to rise from beneath her feet, not a sound, exactly, but a feeling. Like static under her skin. Then she saw it. A grave, newly dug, but not yet covered. And inside, a mirror. She stared down into the open pit. The mirror reflected the sky, but not her face. Instead, it showed a pale version of her cousin Kira, lying in bed somewhere underground, eyes wide open, whispering something silently to the ceiling. Tasha leaned closer. The reflection of Kira turned its head slowly to look at her. Its lips formed the words. It's not the town that traps you. It's what's underneath. Suddenly, a hand burst from the soil beside the mirror, clawing toward her face. Tasha screamed and stumbled back. When she looked again, the grave was full. Covered. As if it had never been opened. Back at the inn, room 6 was locked. Scratched into the door were deep gashes, not in English, not in any human language. They looked like something carved by teeth. Or claws. She went to the front desk. Margot was there, pretending to read an old copy of the Farmer's Almanac. I want answers, Tasha said, slamming the journal down. Margot didn't look up. Your cousin wanted the same thing. You know where she ended up? Gone. Margot's lip twitched. Not gone. Just down there. Tasha swallowed. Down where? That night, Margot took her behind the inn, through the trees to an old root cellar dug into the hillside. The door was locked with 3 iron bolts, and as Margot undid them, the air grew thicker, like breathing through soup. They built the town over it, she explained. They didn't know, not at first. But then it started to wake up. What is it? Margot just looked at her. It's not an it. It's a them. And they remember. The last bolt came loose. The door opened on pitch black. The smell hit her first, wet stone, mildew, and something else, like old blood left in the sun. Margot handed her an oil lantern. Go slow. If you hear whispering, stop walking. If it asks your name, don't answer. Tasha stepped inside. The door slammed shut behind her. The tunnels wound deep. The walls were carved, but not by tools. They looked chewed, gnawed by thousands of something not human. Strange symbols were etched into the stone, matching the ones from her room door. And all around her, wet breathing. She passed cells carved into the rock, some empty. Others had bones arranged in spiral patterns. One held a still-burning candle with a moth circling it endlessly. Then she heard it. Kira's voice. Tasha. Tasha, is that you? Tasha spun around. Kira. Where are you? Down here. It's safe now. They just want to see you. She ran deeper. But the voice started to change. It became slippery, too smooth. Less Kira, more something trying to remember how to be her. She stopped. Around the next bend, the tunnel opened into a chamber, stone benches, blackened altars, and something in the center. A well. It pulsed with a dull, reddish light. From within it came the sound of hundreds of voices. All whispering different things at once. All hissing her name. She stepped closer. Suddenly, a hand gripped her shoulder. She spun around. It was Kira. Hair tangled, face pale and smeared with ash, but it was her. She pressed a finger to her lips. Don't say anything. They're listening. Behind her, from the well, something began to climb out. Part 3, The Well of Teeth. Kira yanked Tasha into the shadows behind a cracked altar, the old stone cold and slick against their backs. Tasha's mind screamed to ask questions, to understand, but the look in Kira's wide, frantic eyes silenced her. From the well, the thing climbing out wasn't whole. At first, it resembled a human, the shape of a torso, arms, a head, but the proportions were off. Its arms were too long, each finger double-jointed and twitching like a spider's legs. Its face was a mirror, but warped, cracked, reflecting not Tasha or Kira, but other faces, some screaming, others laughing with mouths that split too wide. It reached the edge of the well and sniffed the air, a long rattling inhale. The voices from within the pit surged louder, a storm of whispers, some chanting, others weeping. The thing turned toward the altar, as if sensing the heat of their breath. Kira held her finger to her lips again. Tasha closed her eyes. Don't move. Don't speak. Don't exist. It dragged its fingers across the stone floor, nails clinking like metal. It paused inches from their hiding place. They could see the reflection in its mirror face, but it showed them as dead, pale and broken, sprawled across the chamber floor. It tilted its head, then hissed something wet and wrong. Flesh remembers. And slithered back into the well. Once the whispers faded and the red glow dimmed, Kira grabbed Tasha's wrist. We have to go. Before the next one wakes up. Kira, what the hell is this place? This is what's under Mercy Hills. What's always been here. What they built over and tried to forget. And you, how are you still? They didn't want me. They wanted you. As they ran through the tunnels, the stone walls began to breathe. Literally. They expanded and contracted with a slow, lung-like rhythm, exhaling mist that smelled of rot and pine. Faces began to appear in the walls. Some pressed against the surface as if trapped behind a membrane, eyes bulging, mouths open in eternal screams. Others simply watched. Kira pulled her through an archway into a narrow spiral corridor that sloped downward, deeper than any root cellar should have gone. The stone turned to flesh in places. Patches of it felt like skin. Pulsing. Tasha gagged. "It's alive," Kira whispered. "The town. The land. Everything. You've been living down here." Not living. Hiding. Moving between their blind spots. At the bottom of the spiral, the path split 3 ways. Kira hesitated, then pointed right. "This way leads to the mouth." "That's where it began." Tasha hesitated. "And the other ways?" "Left goes to the echo rooms. They scream back whatever you're afraid to say." "And the center path?" A tremor shook the stone. From above, something groaned. "Center goes to the nursery." "We don't go there." They ran right. As they went, Tasha noticed the tunnels here were older, smoother, deeper. The markings on the wall changed from symbols to carvings of scenes. A village offering children to a tree with a mouth. A group of masked figures building a chapel over a bleeding hole. A woman giving birth to a swarm of black-eyed creatures, her face serene. "The town was a cage from the beginning," Kira muttered. "The founders thought if they fed it, it'd leave the rest of the world alone." Fed what? What's under? What sleeps in the soil and dreams of bone? They arrived at a cathedral carved directly into the rock. Massive, echoing, lit by a ceiling of bioluminescent moss. In the center was a well of mouths, dozens of them, gnashing, whispering, some crying for mothers that weren't coming. Tasha stepped forward, entranced. "This is the mouth." "One of many," Kira said. "But this one remembers your family." "My, what?" Kira pointed to a mural on the far wall. It showed a girl with dark hair, a perfect replica of Tasha, chained to the altar, surrounded by robed figures. Above her, a massive tree sprouted from the mouth in the earth, drinking her blood. "They tried once before. Your great-grandmother." She ran. Ran from what? The bargain. The mouths in the pit hissed in unison. "We don't forget. We don't forgive. We always feed." Tasha's head spun. The pressure here was enormous, like the air was trying to push her out of her own skin. She stepped back, and the floor beneath her cracked. Suddenly, hands burst from the stone, but not like before. These were familiar. Her mother's hands. Her father's. Her grandmother's. Each one pale, rotted, but unmistakable. They clawed toward her, moaning her name in their voices. "Tasha. Tasha, come back. Come home." She screamed and fell backward into the pit. Instead of falling to her death, she hit something soft. And then she realized. She was on a tongue. A gigantic, leathery tongue in the center of the cavern, connected to something below. It pulsed, tasted her, shifted. And then, it spoke. Not aloud. Inside her mind. "You are the vessel. You came back. You always do." She clutched her ears. "Get out of me. You carry the blood." The deal was never broken. Just postponed. Now, the debt is due. What debt? I didn't agree to anything. She did. Your blood is hers. Her promise is yours. You will feed the roots. The tongue lifted her toward the ceiling, where ancient vines hung from cracks in the rock, each one ending in a mouth. Just as she felt them begin to bite into her skin, Kira appeared, holding a rusted blade carved with the word reversal. "Bite down," she shouted, throwing the knife toward Tasha. Tasha caught it, slashed the vine, and the cavern screamed. The tongue jerked. The pit pulsed. Blood sprayed from the stone walls like rain. Kira grabbed her, pulled her free, and they ran back into the spiral corridor, now shaking violently. Behind them, the voices screamed. "You cannot escape the root." They barely made it to the surface. The root cellar door exploded open, hurling them into the night. Trees bent backward as if recoiling. The ground beneath Mercy Hills heaved, and from somewhere deep below, came the sound of something enormous waking up. Later that night, in Margot's basement, Kira explained everything. There were never settlers. No founding fathers. Just the first group of desperate fools who heard the whispers and offered blood in exchange for safety. So the town grew. And now it's dying. Why? Because you didn't let it take you. So what happens now? Kira didn't answer. She just handed Tasha the old family Bible. Inside was a map. Of tunnels. Of mouths. Of names yet to be claimed. And at the bottom, scrawled in blood. Mercy Hills was never a place. It was a hunger given shape. Part 4, The Houses That Remember. The map had no legend. No streets, no landmarks, only symbols, spirals, eyes, twisted trees with bleeding roots. Tasha stared at it for hours that night in Margot's basement while the others slept. Or pretended to. There were names scrawled across the page. Many were crossed out. Only 2 remained untouched. Tasha Hale. Kira Morrow. The morning after, Mercy Hills looked normal. Too normal. The houses were quiet. No birds, no dogs barking. The sky was the color of old parchment. There was a strange echo to everything, as if the town had become a recording of itself on loop. When Tasha and Kira stepped outside, they noticed something chilling. Every house they passed had eyes drawn on the windows. Not with markers or paint, but scratched into the glass. Tiny, perfect eyes, each one with a slit pupil. Watching. "It's begun," Kira muttered. "It's waking up the town." "What does that mean?" "It means we have to move fast." They made their way to the first location on the map, a crooked cul-de-sac marked only with a spiral and a name, Clemens' house. It was empty, abandoned for years. But the front door was open. Inside, everything was untouched, a layer of dust on furniture, rotting food on the table. Yet the TV was on, static hissing into the quiet. On the screen, a home video played. Tasha's mother, younger, smiling at a baby in her arms. "Is that me?" Kira picked up the remote, tried to turn it off. The button wouldn't respond. Suddenly the image flickered. The baby turned toward the camera and grinned, revealing a mouthful of needles instead of teeth. The mother looked up at the camera. They said the blood would be enough. The screen went black. Upstairs, the air was colder. Doors opened on their own. The hallway seemed longer than it should have been. Each room they passed showed a different version of Tasha's life. One room had her childhood bedroom, but everything was wet, the stuffed animals weeping red tears. Another had her high school locker, but every book inside had her name written in blood on every page. The last room was the worst. It was her current apartment, perfectly recreated, down to her chipped coffee mug and old shoes. A note was on the desk in her own handwriting. "I never left. You were the dream." She turned to Kira, her face pale. "It's rewriting my memories. That's how it lures people back. Makes them forget what's real. What stops it? Memory. Pain. Truth. It feeds on denial." At the center of the Clemens house was a trapdoor leading to a root cellar. Of course. But this one had something new, teeth around the frame. Human teeth. Embedded in the wood, as if the house had begun to digest itself. Inside, they found the remains of a nursery. Cribs lined with flesh. Toys that bled when touched. And at the far end, a massive cradle with a body inside. The body was Kira. Or, a version of her. Eyes sewn shut. Lips pulled into a stitched smile. Limbs too long. Fingers twitching. "What is this?" Tasha whispered. Kira stared. Her voice cracked. "That's who I was meant to become. That's who they wanted. A vessel for their memory." The thing in the cradle began to rise. Tasha didn't wait, she grabbed a rusted pipe and drove it into the thing's chest. It shrieked, not in pain but in laughter. "We remember you. We always do." They ran, the laughter echoing after them. Outside, the town was different. The streets no longer matched the map. Buildings shifted when they weren't looking. The street signs now read things like "Forgotten," "Regret," "Bloodline." Again. Every house they passed had someone inside watching them. But when they looked directly, the windows were mirrors, reflecting not their own faces, but versions of themselves smiling back with black eyes. "Where do we go now?" Tasha asked. Kira turned the map upside down. The symbols rearranged themselves. "To the cradle house." "That sounds terrible." "It is." The cradle house sat at the end of an impossible road. The pavement beneath their feet began to soften, like walking across a tongue. The sky turned crimson. Trees bent inward, as if bowing to something watching from above. The house itself was massive, Victorian, elegant, but wrong in every dimension. Its windows blinked. The door pulsed like a heartbeat. Inside, time bent. Every step took them into another memory, another life. One moment, Tasha was in grade school, and her classmates all had stitched smiles. The next, she was at her mother's funeral, except everyone was clapping, cheering. Then she was giving birth, her belly huge. But when the baby came out, it had her own face and whispered, "You were always meant to feed me." She screamed, stumbled back. Kira caught her. "Don't believe what you see here. These are the echoes. They feed on might-have-beens." They found a stairwell that led downward, but there was no bottom. Only falling. They landed hard, in a place with no sky, no ground, just roots, hundreds of miles long, forming bridges, walls, tendrils. In the center of the space was a cradle the size of a cathedral. Inside it, a massive infant made of bones, eyes, and mouths. It breathed in silence. Its skin was etched with names, generations of Mercy Hill's families. Kira walked toward it, shaking. "This is the beginning. The first hunger." "What is it?" "It's the root child. The bargain. They gave it their pain, their memories, their futures. In return, they were left alone." Tasha stepped forward. "How do we kill it?" Kira looked at her, eyes wide. "You don't. Then what are we doing here?" "We wake it." Before Tasha could protest, Kira pulled out a vial of black liquid. "What is that?" "The opposite of forgetting. A memory. The truth. Pure and undiluted." "Of what?" "Of what they did to me." Kira poured the vial onto the cradle. The reaction was immediate. The ground screamed. The root child's mouths opened wide and began to chant in all the voices of Mercy Hills. "You broke the pact. You broke the pact. You broke the pact." The air split like paper. Reality folded. Tasha was suddenly back in her own apartment, waking up to her phone buzzing. A message from her mom. "Are you coming home for the funeral?" Another message from Kira. "Don't believe it. Stay awake. You're not home. You're inside its dream. She ran to the mirror. Her reflection had no eyes. Back in the cradle house, in reality, her body convulsed. Kira was gone. The root child was bleeding light. The names on its skin began to peel off, flaking into ash. Tasha stood, trembling. She knew what she had to do. She opened the Bible again. Inside was one last name, freshly written. Tasha Hale, Liberator. And beneath it, a dream ends when someone wakes up screaming. She took the blade marked reversal and plunged it into her own chest. But instead of pain, she felt clarity. Every memory rushed back. The real ones. The ones that weren't twisted by the roots. She saw her mother, kind, scared. She saw Kira as a child, crying in the church basement. She saw the real town, broken and silent, already rotting beneath the soil. The root child wailed. The entire world shook. Tasha screamed, and the dream shattered. She woke in the field outside Mercy Hills. No blood. No wound. The town behind her was crumbling, the buildings collapsing into holes in the ground. The sky burned red. Kira sat beside her, coughing. You did it. What happens now? We move. And we remember. What about the town? Let it die. Let it rest. Far beneath the earth, in a place no one would ever find again, the root child slept. Not dreaming. Not whispering. Just quiet. For now. Part 5, Where the Quiet Things Wait. 2 months later. Outside Cedar Hollow, Nebraska. Tasha had stayed off the grid. Changed her name. Tossed her phone into a river the second the bus crossed state lines. Now she lived in a borrowed trailer on the edge of a ghost town no one remembered. But she couldn't sleep. Not really. The quiet didn't let her. Every night she heard it, not a sound, exactly, but the absence of one. Like a vacuum where something once breathed. It was a silence shaped like hunger. She tried therapy. Journals. Sleep meds. Nothing helped. Until the letter arrived. It wasn't mailed. Just slipped under her trailer door in the dead of night. The envelope was plain. Her fake name was written on it, Aaron Black. But the handwriting was hers. Inside was a photograph of Mercy Hills, or what was left of it. A crater, maybe a mile wide. Burnt out husks of houses around its rim. And on the back, just 3 words. It's not over. The next morning, someone knocked. It was Kira. Alive. Thinner. Paler. But alive. You saw it too? Tasha asked. Kira nodded. They're rebuilding. Who? Not people. She pulled out a new map. This one wasn't drawn in ink. It looked burned into the paper, deep grooves, like scars. The layout was wrong. Streets curved in loops. Symbols shifted when you stared too long. There's another town, Kira whispered. A sister. One that never was. Mercy's mirror. You mean like, a twin? Worse. A replacement. The town had no name. Locals called it, the Hollows, though no one lived there anymore. It didn't appear on maps. GPS couldn't find it. But the roads knew how to get there. Even though the crater had swallowed Mercy Hills, something had risen elsewhere, overnight. Buildings older than time. Churches with no doors. A playground where the swings moved even when the air was still. They crossed into it at dusk. The moment they entered, the car radio crackled to life, despite being off. Mercy never ends. It just changes masks. They parked by an old diner with a crooked sign that read, "All you can eat. All you can leave." Inside, the tables were full, but the patrons were wax figures. Half melted. Eyes closed. Plates piled with teeth and spoons of hair. Behind the counter, the cook stood still, skin pale as candle wax, smile too wide. He opened his eyes when they entered. "You came back," he said in 3 voices at once. "No," Tasha said. "We ended it." The cook pointed toward the kitchen. "Then why's the baby still crying?" Behind the kitchen was a hallway that shouldn't fit in a diner. It stretched for miles, lined with rooms. Each door bore a name, all names Tasha remembered. Eleanor Clemens. Father Brigg. Harper Hale. The last one read, "Tasha, Trial 2. She didn't want to open it. She did anyway. Inside was a hospital room. A monitor beeped slowly. On the bed was her mother, bandaged head to toe, eyes swollen shut. A voice behind her said, "She never died. That's just what you needed to believe." She turned, no one was there. The bed was empty now. On the monitor, her own voice whispered, "Keep going. It gets worse." Kira opened the next door. A classroom. Chalkboards bleeding. Desks carved with eyes. And standing in the corner, herself, a child version. Lips sewn. Holding a teddy bear made of ribs. "It took our pasts," Kira said softly. "It grew them like roots." A crash echoed behind them. The walls shifted. Doors vanished. A new sign burned into the air. "The trials have begun." They ran, finding themselves in a church. Stained glass glowed with living scenes, mercy hills burning, children being baptized in ash, and a dark figure standing atop a cradle of bones, arms outstretched. The organ played itself. And the pews began to speak, voices coming from the wood. "You broke the dream. Now build a new one. Memory must be fed. The flesh remembers." Suddenly, they weren't alone. Figures crawled from the walls, versions of themselves. Each one slightly wrong. Tasha with no eyes, dripping shadows. Kira covered in runes, fingers like needles. A baby that screamed in Latin. They ran. At the center of the hollows was a new structure. It had no name. But they knew what it was. The nursery. It pulsed with light and heat. Wrapped in chains. Surrounded by hooded figures that didn't move. Inside, time slowed. There were rows of cradles, each holding something different. One had a shriveled heart, still beating. Another had a pair of lips, whispering constantly. The last had a snow globe, inside was Mercy Hills, intact, perfect. Tasha touched the glass. Her ears bled. In the center was a crib larger than a truck. Inside was her, sleeping. Or, something that looked like her. But the mouth was too wide, filled with tongues. It breathed in syllables. "Tasha." She backed away. Kira grabbed her arm. "We need to destroy it. Now." "With what?" Kira pulled a mirror from her bag. Old. Cracked. The one they'd used before, the one that showed truth. They placed it before the sleeping thing. It opened its eyes. And screamed. Not a sound, but a pull, like gravity. Tasha felt herself being unwritten, like her past was bleeding out. She reached into the crib, and stabbed the reflection in the neck with a shard of the mirror. The room shattered. They woke in the diner. No patrons. No cook. The air smelled like burnt milk and rot. A note lay on the table. Trial 2, passed. Trial 3, the wake. They left the hollows. But the road never ended. The GPS just spun in circles. The radio played a single phrase. The child grows. The cradle cracks. They hadn't escaped. They'd just gone deeper. Part 6, The Wake. 3 days later. Location, unknown roads. The rain hadn't stopped. Not once. Since they left the hollows, the world around them looked blurred. Gas stations vanished the moment they passed them. Maps rebooted. Day and night switched without warning. Tasha and Kira barely spoke now. Each of them haunted in a different way. Kira scratched at her arms constantly, like something was crawling underneath. Tasha had stopped sleeping. Whenever she closed her eyes, she dreamt from the perspective of the thing in the crib. They weren't running anymore. They were drifting. Until they reached the sign. A billboard, ancient and rotted. Only one word remained clear. Wake. There was a town. A real one, maybe, or at least pretending to be. Streetlights worked. Shops had flickering, open, signs. Music drifted from a diner that looked freshly painted. But no people. Not one. This is it, Kira whispered. Trial 3. And what exactly is the wake? Tasha asked. Kira pointed at the windows. Inside every shop, every home, every car, were people. Standing still. Staring forward. Crying silently. They entered the diner. The same old tune played, the same as in the hollows. Hush now, baby, don't you cry. At the counter, a waitress stood, frozen mid-pour, coffee leaking onto the floor. Her face twisted in a scream, but her mouth was sewn shut with fishing line. Suddenly the jukebox clicked. Changed songs. You are cordially invited to your own funeral. A bell rang as the front door slammed shut. Then the sky darkened. It's starting, Kira said. The wake means death. But not ours. Whose, then? Kira pointed outside. The people were moving now. But only in one direction, all walking slowly toward the center of town. Carrying something long, rectangular. A coffin. They followed. Every step they took, memories whispered from the shadows. Tasha's father, screaming in that flooded basement. Kira's baby brother, eyes gouged out in the family photo. The moment the cradle cracked open. The crowd gathered around an old church. But this wasn't Mercy Hills. Or the Hollows. This church was theirs. Built of pieces from both towns. Steeples that split into antlers. Doors that breathed slowly. The bell tolled. Inside, candles burned in rows, each flame shaped like a crying face. At the altar stood a priest. But he was backwards, face on the back of his head, fingers growing from his spine like wings. He smiled at them. The mourners have arrived. The ritual can begin. The coffin was placed before them. Tasha felt her heart stop. Inside lay, herself. Pale. Serene. Eyes closed. But there was something in her mouth. A note. She reached in and took it. The paper was wet, but the words bled clear. The child is not yours alone. The womb held twins. Only one was born. The other woke up. The coffin snapped shut. And the church walls cracked open. Not outwards, inwards. Revealing rows of pews, filled with herself, over and over. Different versions. Different ages. Some with mouths sewn. Some with no faces at all. And each one cried the same word. Liar. 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 The priest screamed and pulled at his own spine, peeling it like rope. The roof collapsed upward, revealing a sky of eyes, blinking in rhythm. Suddenly, the floor swallowed them whole. They landed in water. Freezing, black water that didn't ripple. A drowned hallway, lined with nursery wallpaper and mobile toys spinning in reverse. They swam forward, lungs aching, until they reached a door. It opened on its own. Behind it was a funeral parlor, flooded, but filled with dozens of open caskets. Each one held someone they loved. All smiling. All alive, but unmoving. "What is this place?" Tasha asked. "Memory," Kira whispered. "But twisted. Everything we've buried." A tape recorder played overhead. Tasha recognized her mother's voice. "You never cried, even when you should have. That's not strength, Tasha. That's what makes you dangerous." She dropped to her knees. Kira approached the last coffin. Inside was herself. But it wasn't a body. It was tied cloth, soaked in blood. Like a swaddled newborn. And when she reached in, it opened its eyes. And said, in Tasha's voice, "You left me behind." The walls began to bleed. A low droning sound rose from the water. The caskets sank one by one. They ran again. The parlor shifted into a hospital, the Mercy Hills ward, only rotted. 4 tubes dangling from the ceiling. Monitors flatlined in Morse code. The word it spelled. Stay. They didn't. Through rusted double doors, they stumbled into a cradle-shaped room. Inside sat the child. The real one. Not quite Kira. Not quite Tasha. A hybrid, hair black as tar, eyes like split clocks, skin veined with static. It sat among candles and bones, playing with a mobile made of teeth. When it looked up, the world tilted. "We were triplets," it said. But only one was allowed to live. The others were buried. "You're not real," Kira hissed. "I was always here. Growing in the silence. Drinking what you forgot." Tasha felt her mind bend. Memories she never lived began to surface, a crib beside hers, a second name whispered by her mother, a lullaby with missing lines. "So what do you want?" Tasha whispered. The child stood. To wake. Suddenly, hundreds of arms rose from the ground, versions of themselves, both past and future, grabbing at the air. "Feed me what was stolen," the child demanded. "Or I'll take what you still have." Kira lunged. Pulled the cracked mirror from her bag. Held it to the child's face. It screamed, but this time, a real scream. A voice layered in infinite tones. The mirror shattered, but it was enough. The ground split beneath it. The crib collapsed into ash. The room folded into itself. They woke up. Back in the diner. No music. No waitress. Only a note, nailed to the counter with a rusted spoon. Trial 3, failed. Final trial, the return. Outside, the world was no longer Earth. The sky burned in concentric rings. The trees had no tops. The sun screamed with every blink. And the road led in only one direction. Back to Mercy Hills. Only now, it had a new sign. "Welcome to the cradle. Population, U." Part 7, The Return. The sky was wrong. Tasha and Kira stared up as it cracked like glass. Every fragment of the heavens now flickered with memories, but not theirs. Lives they'd never lived. Faces they didn't know. Yet all of it felt personal. The sign read, Mercy Hills. But it was a lie. The trees were taller. The buildings older. The streets, alive. They pulsed, ever so faintly, like breathing skin. "It's not Mercy Hills anymore," Kira whispered. "It's become the cradle." Tasha stepped forward, feeling the town shift beneath her shoes, as if it remembered her. The first thing they noticed was the silence. No wind. No insects. No distant hum of life. Just a blanket of hush that felt intentional, like something listening closely. As they passed the old grocery store, its boarded-up windows blinked. Literally. Eyelids made of tar and wood. The church bell tolled once. The echo didn't fade. It just lingered in the air. "What is this?" Tasha muttered. Kira looked down at her hands. Her veins glowed dimly, like ink being written into her from the inside out. "I think we're becoming part of it." They reached the hospital. It was exactly where they left it, and yet, impossibly different. Stretched. Elongated. Like a photo developed wrong. Above the entrance, a new word had been carved. Deliverance. "The final trial is here," Kira said. "Everything leads back to where it began." They entered. Inside, the walls whispered. Not in voices, but in sounds they remembered: Tasha's father's drowning cough. Kira's baby brother's shriek. The laugh of the man who lived in the walls. But this time, there was another voice layered beneath them all. A woman's. Motherly. Soft. Melodic. "Return to me." The elevator still stood at the end of the hall. Rust had swallowed it. The doors slightly opened, revealing a black void. But there was a button. Just one. -3. They pressed it. The descent was silent. No hum. No motion. Just the sensation of falling sideways. When the doors opened, it wasn't a floor. It was a memory. 1979. The hospital buzzed with life. Nurses in dated uniforms. Families pacing waiting rooms. But none of them saw Tasha or Kira. They were ghosts here. Through glass windows, they saw it: a delivery room. A woman screaming. A doctor grinning. "That's my mom," Tasha gasped. Kira grabbed her arm. "Look, the cradle." Beside the bed sat an ornate crib. Old. Wood carved in patterns of spirals and mouths. And something moved inside. Then the room darkened. The doctor raised a scalpel. 3 babies. Only one cried. The others? Taken. Placed in the cradle. Swaddled in whispers. Suddenly, the hospital warped, peeling into a hallway of teeth. Each door lined with gums and fangs, snapping shut the moment you neared. But one door remained open. The door to room 13. They entered. Inside was a nursery. But not one from this world. The walls dripped. The mobile spun backward. Instead of a nightlight, a lantern hung from a spine, glowing softly. In the crib was a mirror. Not glass, but skin, stretched tight over bone. And their reflections? Not them. Versions of themselves who never survived. Kira reached out, and the mirror screamed. The room shifted. No longer a nursery. Now, a theater. Rows of empty seats. A stage lit by flickering bulbs. A single chair sat center, and in it, a woman. Hair white as ash. Eyes closed. Lips stitched into a smile. "She's the mother," Kira whispered. "The one who started the cradle cult." Tasha stepped forward. "She's blind." "Why is she?" The woman opened her mouth. No words. Just a siren's hum. It vibrated in their bones. Then behind them, the seats filled. With every version of themselves. Every memory. Every fear. Watching. The woman finally spoke. "You have come to choose." The lights dimmed. A second figure stepped onto the stage. It was the child again. The one they met in the wake. Eyes like clocks. Voice like both of theirs fused. "One of you stays," it said. "One of you returns. And one of you was never born." Kira turned to Tasha, trembling. It's a test. A final one. We don't get to win. We just choose who deserves to exist. This is insane, Tasha spat. We made it this far. We both deserve. But only one truly lived, the child said. It pointed to the sky above the theater. There, projected like film, was every life they'd lived. And every one that was denied. Tasha's reel was first. Memories of birthdays, sorrow, growth, and silence. Her father's abuse. Her resilience. Her quiet rage. Then Kira's. Moments of neglect. A mother who left. A brother who screamed until he never did again. Her spiral into silence. Then a third reel. The child's life. A life without form. Lived only in shadows. In what-ifs. Watching through windows that never opened. It whispered. I was buried beneath your memories. But I saw it all. And I want my turn. The mother finally spoke again. So choose. Erase the forgotten. Return the buried. Or sacrifice the lived. The lights flickered. The audience leaned in. Tasha looked to Kira. What if we say no? Kira shook her head. We're inside the cradle now. Everything here demands balance. We either choose, or it chooses for us. Time slowed. Kira stepped forward. Then take me. Tasha gasped. No. I remember now, Kira whispered. I wasn't supposed to survive. The night we were born, it was you. You cried. I didn't. But they swapped us. Out of fear. She turned to the child. You want a life? Take mine. Make it mean something. The stage lit up, red. The crowd stood. The mother opened her arms. And Kira stepped into the light. She didn't scream. She smiled. Tasha blinked, and the theater was gone. She stood in her bedroom. Her real one. Morning sun through the window. Birds chirping. No cradle. No whispers. She looked at her reflection. Only one person stared back. But the world wasn't the same. At night, sometimes, she heard a lullaby through the vents. Not one she remembered, but one she should have. And in the mirror. Sometimes. A girl with Kira's smile watched her. Not haunting. Just waiting. On the first anniversary, Tasha returned to Mercy Hills. The sign was gone. The town had vanished. In its place was a single cradle. Carved into the earth. Unmoving. Eternal. She left a flower beside it. And whispered. You were never forgotten. Part 8, The Root Beneath Mercy Hills. All cities grow from somewhere, but not all from the soil. Excerpt from the Cradle Cult Codex, page 1. 1912, Mercy Hills was still a whisper. A rail town. Small. Dust-bitten. One school. One church. One graveyard no one admitted to tending. And one house. Number 9, Whitlow Street. Where it all began. Mrs. Elsabeth Rook arrived on a fog-choked morning. She wore black, spoke softly, and had no known relatives. But she brought something with her. A bassinet. Ornate. Ancient. Wood twisted in shapes that never stayed still when stared at. No one saw a baby inside. Yet at night, locals heard cooing. The townsfolk welcomed her, for a time. Elsabeth kept to herself. Grew strange plants in her garden. Never attended Sunday service. But she gave away bread, helped birth children, and could cure fevers with only her breath. A witch, whispered some. A healer, said others. A mother of things not meant to live, said the old priest, Father Griggs. One day, he vanished. Only his rosary remained, left swinging on the church door, like a pendulum. The record keeper. Young Harlan Pitt, a schoolteacher, was the first to document it. He noticed changes. Children speaking languages they'd never learned. Dreams shared across beds. Trees bending away from Elsabetha's home. Cats giving birth to litters that stared like men. He began a journal. Labeled every oddity. Sketched the cradle he once glimpsed through her window. The wood whispers, he wrote. And some of the names it says, aren't names at all. They're warnings. Harlan disappeared after attempting to burn her garden. His shoes were found neatly placed at the edge of town. Roots had grown through them. Elsabetha's child eventually emerged. Or so people believed. She introduced her as Adeline, pale, quiet, always smiling. Never seen eating. Her pupils, slitted, like an animal's. But everyone agreed she was beautiful. She attended school but never aged. Her voice never changed. Her handwriting remained the same for 12 years. When a curious boy named Dennis broke into number 9 to see her sleep, he returned with snow-white hair and refused to speak again. He died at 23, writing, "She is not a girl," on every wall of his house. The first disappearance. 1919, Mercy Hill's children began to vanish. One by one. Never loudly. No struggle. Just, gone. At first, it was blamed on wolves. Or vagrants. Then, the town discovered every family had one thing in common. They had accepted a gift from Elsabeth. A pie. A tincture. A lullaby she hummed outside their windows. Sheriff Langley confronted her. His final transmission, scratched into a telegraph line. "She knows my daughter's name. My unborn daughter." They found his hat by the cradle in Elsabetha's front yard. Inside it, a tooth still wet with blood. The root chamber. In 1921, coal miners beneath the Eastern Ridge broke into a chamber. Not natural. Not man-made. Stone worn smooth. Walls covered in carvings of cradles, thrones, wombs with too many limbs. At the center, a tree, bone-white, leafless, growing from a cracked skull. Roots pulsed like veins. And a heartbeat could be heard. They sealed the mine. But Mercy Hills changed forever after that. Children began drawing it. Men dreamed of it. Women miscarried in threes. And a phrase started circulating, always whispered. The root beneath. The night of teeth. On October 13, 1923, everyone in town lost their teeth. Every single person. They didn't fall out. They were replaced. Smoothly. Overnight. With teeth not meant for human jaws. Jagged, long, some spiraled like drills. People screamed. Bit their tongues. Many went mad. But Adeline smiled the brightest. Her teeth were still human. "You see," she whispered to the mayor's wife. "You're growing like me now." Then she placed a finger to the woman's lips. And the woman never spoke again. The burnings. By 1925, only 37 citizens remained. They attempted to burn number 9. 7 times. Each time, the fire turned inward, burning the arsonists instead. On the 8th attempt, the house laughed. Not from within, the laugh came from the sky. The survivors fled. Or tried to. But the road out curved back on itself. A loop. A cradle. The final entry. The last written words in the town's archive came from a girl named Ruthie Bell, age 11. She wrote. "Mommy is different now. Her eyes are soft and warm but not hers. She holds me too tight. She tells me I was a gift. But I don't think I was born. I think I was dug up. Present day. The land where Mercy Hills stood is now off-grid. No roads lead to it. But hikers claim they've found it by mistake. An empty town. A swinging cradle. A house with doors that open before you knock. And sometimes, a girl greets them. Still 12. Still smiling. Still offering names that don't belong to anyone living. Underscore 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 underscore. Part 9. Beneath the Cradle Tree. Some doors are locked not to keep things out, but to keep what's inside from remembering how to leave. Field Note Number 002, Cradle Expedition Team. Present day, Blackwell Paranormal Archive, BPA. Mercy Hills became a myth. Satellite scans show nothing but forest. No roads. No buildings. No graves. But the legends remain, so do the disappearances. Dr. Elsie Varnum, historian and occult linguist, found the Ruthie Bell pages hidden in the Blackwell archives in 2023. Typewritten. Aged. But authentic. They mentioned the cradle tree. The root beneath. A name that wasn't in any folklore database. The tree that feeds on memory, she whispered during her first reading. Or worse, on what memory tries to forget. She assembled a team. Nathan Riggs, ex-Army, logistics and security. Juno Sparrow, cartographer and survivalist. Marcus Dell, tech specialist, skeptic. Father Abram Linley, excommunicated priest. And Elsie herself. Leader. Scholar. Obsessive. They called it Project Cradle. Day 1, arrival. They chartered a private heli-drop into the Appalachian Dead Zone. Within 2 hours of landing, the compass spun freely. GPS stopped working. Marcus swore he could see the sun rising from 2 directions. Just fog, Riggs muttered. Just bad angles. They found an empty town within a circular ridge. Burnt homes. A well that breathed. And at the center. Number 9, Whitlow Street. Whole. Pristine. Unaged. Impossible, Juno whispered, tracing her fingers along the untouched wood. This place should be gone. The door opened. Of course it did. Day 2, the house. Inside number 9, time unraveled. Clocks ticked backward. Candles melted upward. A tea kettle hissed, but the stove was cold. In the living room sat the cradle, still. Waiting. When Father Linley approached it, he whispered a prayer and placed his hand on its rim. Then blinked. And whispered. Where's my wife? He didn't have one. They pulled him away. The cradle had filled with water, dark as ink, with something moving inside. The first night. They set up base in the town school. Battery-powered lights. Surveillance on number 9. But the footage from every camera came back wrong. Juno appeared to have 3 shadows. Marcus wasn't present in any clip. And Elsie was standing behind herself in one frame, eyes open wide, whispering something backwards. That night, they heard lullabies. No one knew the language. Yet everyone understood it. Riggs vomited roots the next morning. Day 3, the root path. Juno discovered a passage behind the graveyard. A tunnel, sloped downward, lined in teeth. Actual teeth, child-sized, embedded in the rock like barnacles. The air smelled of milk. And blood. They entered. The walls pulsed. Heartbeat. Slow. Ancient. After 2 miles, they reached it. The root chamber. White tree. Skull base. Identical to the drawings from Harlan Pitt in 1919. Except now, it was awake. Its roots shifted. One reached toward Father Linley, brushing his foot. He screamed. Fell. And when they dragged him back, he was speaking fluent Greek. They ran. But the tunnel grew longer with each step. Day 4, memories that aren't yours. Back at the school, Father Linley spoke in Ruthie Bell's voice. She described her mother changing. Her house growing breathing walls. Her skin flaking off in petal-like slips every night. Mommy said we were planted, not born. Elsie recorded everything. Marcus built a machine to block certain frequencies. Claimed the air vibrated with something older than sound. That night, Juno vanished. Her maps remained. But all of them were now blank. The only note scrawled across them. No center. No outside. Only the cradle. Day 5, the hollowing. Riggs began cutting his palm and pulling out small white seeds. Elsie locked him in the school library. He wept. Asked her to sing the lullaby. Said it helped. But Elsie, she started remembering things. A childhood she never had. A house with black-eyed dolls that fed her honey mixed with soil. She dreamed of suckling roots instead of milk. The cradle in the house started creaking on its own. Day 6, the real Elsie. That night, Father Linley hanged himself using his rosary. They found him floating above the altar of the old church, spinning slowly. Eyes open. Mouth grinning. But he had left a note. You're not Elsie. The real Elsie never left the womb. You're what she dreamt she'd be. She didn't believe it. Until she looked at the footage of their arrival. And saw herself already standing in the house window when the helicopter landed. Smiling. Day 7, the cradle tree blooms. The tree beneath town bloomed at midnight. Flowers made of teeth. Pollen that made the air sing in multiple voices. One was Ruthie. One was Father Linley. The rest were unborn. Marcus tried to destroy the tree using explosives. He reached its core, the skull it grew from. When he cracked it open, he found his own face inside. Twisting. Smiling. Infantile. He screamed so hard his jaw dislocated. And then he was pulled into the bark, roots splitting his skin like paper. The end of daylight. Now only Elsie remains. Or whatever wears her shape. The house at number 9 is growing. Windows multiply. Doors open into wombs of stitched velvet. Children's laughter echoes from the town that should not be. And beneath it all, the root remembers. Part 10, the womb of the house. Some homes aren't built. They are born. And they don't die when you leave. They wait to call you back. Ruthie Bell's final page. Only Elsie remains. Or at least, that's what she tells herself. The town of Mercy Hills no longer has boundaries. The mist has erased the horizon. Time folds in on itself like spoiled milk curdling in a jar. She's been here 7 days. Or 77. Or not yet. The house grows. Number 9, Whitlow Street is alive. It doesn't creak. It breathes. Wood pulses. Carpet throbs beneath Elsie's boots like muscle memory. The walls remember her every step. Sometimes, they whisper. You were always meant to return. The rooms shift at night. Hallways multiply. Mirrors show another version of her, smiling, always smiling, mouth just a little too wide. The nursery below. She dreams of the cradle. Now massive. No longer in the house, but below it, beneath layers of dirt and old bone. A cavernous room of 1,000 cradles, each rocking to their own rhythm. Empty. Or not. Elsie watches as umbilical cords slither across the ceiling, attaching to the cradles. Feeding them. She doesn't scream anymore. Screaming would mean she still believes in escape. Return of the others. They come back one by one. Marcus, mouth sewn shut, fingers twitching in Morse code no one understands. Juno, hair grown like vines, eyes hollowed out, carrying maps drawn in living skin. Riggs, now a tree himself, arms bark, eyes sap, voice full of wind and grief. They don't speak. They stare, following her from room to room, waiting. Not threatening. Just knowing. As if watching a seed crack open. The room that shouldn't exist. One night, Elsie finds a door made of stitched linen, sewn shut with threads of hair. She opens it. Inside. A hospital room. Flickering lights. A single crib, filled with soil and teeth. A nurse turns. It's her mother, who died decades ago. You were the quiet one, the nurse says, voice soft. The sleeper seed. We planted you well. Elsie stumbles back. Her reflection in the glass is a child, a baby, face caked with earth, eyes like black roots burrowing inward. The Book of Unbirth. In the school library, now choked with vines, Elsie finds a book that wasn't there before. The Womb of the House. Handwritten in blood and bile, bound in baby shoes. Each page describes a birth in reverse. An infant crawling back into the womb. A scream sucked in instead of out. Umbilical cords used like puppet strings. Final page. You were never born. You are the memory of a birth that never happened. The lullaby. Every night, the house hums. Not a sound, more like a pressure in her ribs. A rhythm in her blood. She begins to hum it back. Without thinking. It feels like instinct. Each time she sings it, another part of the house opens. Rooms full of clocks with bleeding hands. Windows showing wombs instead of worlds. A staircase that descends forever, with no steps. She follows it anyway. The basement. The deepest chamber smells of rust and afterbirth. She finds it there. The true cradle. Carved from human femurs. Lined with crushed velvet and black moss. It rocks before she touches it. Something inside stirs. Not a baby. Not anymore. Come closer, it whispers. Mommy. She sees herself in its reflection, as a rooted being, with branches for limbs, and a face made of fractured glass. The cradle's lid creaks open. Inside, a second Elsie, eyes shut. Breathing. Still unborn. The choice. The voice returns. Not from the cradle. From the house. From the ground. From her own mouth. You may leave. But she stays. The Elsie who was never born. Elsie falls to her knees. Touches the glassy skin of the other her. Cold. But alive. Waiting. Waiting to wake. Waiting to replace. The last recording. Marcus's device, left behind, begins recording automatically. Crackling static. Then, Elsie's voice. Slow. Calm. This is Dr. Elsie Varnum, final transmission. I understand now. We are not people. We are the seeds of memory, planted in a soil of time. This house is not a house. It is the womb of what the world forgot. And I was never meant to leave. I was only meant to wake her. The recording cuts. Now. No team returns. No GPS signal is found. But number 9, Whitlow Street appears now in other towns. In dreams. In childhood memories you're sure you never had. Sometimes, people see a white cradle on the sidewalk. Rocking. Just a little,